Good morning, boys and girls. We're back with Hank the Cowdog. It's a Dog's Life. This is Chapter 10, On Death Row. That guy was the dog catcher, see, and when he got out of his pickup and started creeping toward me with a butterfly net, I began to suspect that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Hold still, doggy," he said. "Just 2 more steps and I'll take you for a little ride." Who did he think he was talking to? I mean, how dumb would you have to be to fall for that old hold still doggy business? I showed him a few fangs and gave him a scowl, and fellers, he dropped that butterfly net and flew back into the pickup. "Mobile 3 to City Hall, Larry. He attacked me, almost got me my leg, for gosh sake. Send some police and the ambulance. This mud is hydrophobia. I ain't kidding." It occurred to me that I had better make a run for the high and lonesome. I could have gone back into the yard, but I didn't want to cause trouble for Maggie. Not after she had been so nice and fixed me that special supper. I headed south down the alley. I was still feeling a little weak, don't you see, and my back end didn't follow my front end. By this time, the dog catcher was perched on the cab of his pickup, talking on the radio. "Mobile 3 to City Hall. Suspect is proceeding south, and holy cow, Larry, he's got the blind staggers. Better tell him to seal off the whole south end of town. Larry, I mean, he's out of his head and extremely dangerous." I could hear the sirens now, 300 or 400 of them moving down Main Street. I started running. The darn bubbles were still coming out of my mouth. What the heck had brought on all these bubbles? I'd had indigestion before, ate some aged mutton with a bunch of coyotes one time, and it sure made me sick, but I'd never had bubbles or foamed at the mouth. I looked up ahead and saw a police car in the alley, so I veered off to the left and started across a vacant lot. But there was a fire truck coming straight at me. I wheeled around, ran back to the alley, figured I'd leap over a fence and vanish in somebody's backyard. But my leaper was out of commission, too weak of the knees. I was trapped against the fence, surrounded by police with guns and firemen with axes and dog catcher with his net. They were closing in on me. I heard a sound on the fence above me. I looked around and saw that same fat yellow cat and her 3 kittens. "You see, children, the chickens have come home to roost. Crime never pays if you're dumb enough to get caught. Let this be a lesson to you." On a better day, I might have given them cats a few more lessons, but with the Department of Defense closing in on me, I just didn't have the time. I looked for a place to run, but they had me cornered. One of the policemen had his shotgun pointed in my direction, and one of the things you learn in security work is that arguing with a shotgun will mess up your coat and produce lead poisoning. Instead of making a run for it, I sat down. The dog catcher came creeping up with his net in the air, and if I'd have made the slightest growl, I bet he would have jumped back into last week. But I didn't. He dropped the net around me, and I was caught. "Easy now. Stand back, boys. I'm telling you this dog is out of his mind. He tried to tear my leg off back yonder, and when I ran for the pickup, he attacked one of my tires." Just then the guy in the t-shirt, the one who belonged to that sorry collection of cats, came out of the gate and asked to talk to the police. Yeah, he's the one that tried to kill my cats. I thought there was something peculiar about that dog, and he's got rabies, huh? I suspected it all along, sure did." They carried me to the dog catcher's wagon and throwed me into the wire cage and locked the door. Then 2 or 3 of them stood around staring at me and talking. The dog catcher got a long stick and started poking at me with it. What was I supposed to do? I let him poke me a couple times, and then I bit the stick in half. "Look at that! Did you see that? We got us a sick dog, boys, and did I tell you about how he tried to attack a child before y'all were here? The heck he did. Yes, sir, I'll tell you this, boys, and it comes from bottom of my heart. If this town hadn't had a dog catcher, Half the little children on this end of town would be running around with hydrophobia right this minute. Kids these days are bad enough without hydrophobia. That's right, Bert. And the next time that city council takes up business of salaries, they'd better remember who goes out and saves the little children of this town from mad dogs. One of the policemen bent down and looked at me. He made an ugly face, and I made one right back at him. What do you do with a mad dog, Jimmy Joe? Oh, well, we'll call the vet out to the pound tomorrow, and he'll run a test. What's the test? Cut off his head and send it to the state lab. Huh? Cut that what? Say, that didn't sound good at all. As a matter of fact, it sounded real bad. What the heck did they do if the test came out negative? I had a couple more questions I wanted answers to. But about that time, Jimmy Joe Dog Catcher got into his pickup and hauled me off to the city dog pound. It was on the south edge of town on a lonely wind-blown hill. As we approached the place, I could hear the wind moaning through the chain-link fences. Jimmy Joe backed up to a pen with a high fence around it and opened the gate so I could go into the pen. He started poking me again with the stick. Go on, you crazy devil. Get out of here. This is the end of the road. No more biting innocent children for you, pal. I don't know where he came up with that business about biting innocent children. I never bit an innocent child in my life. Never even bit one who wasn't innocent. When you're head of ranch security, you don't go around biting kids. Monsters, yes. Coyotes and coons and criminal dogs, yes. But kids? No. It seemed to me the dog catcher needed to have his head sent to the state lab, but nobody was interested in my opinion. I went into the cell and laid down in the back corner. The dog catcher slammed the door and stood there for a minute. No collar, no dog tags, no name, no identification. We won't have to feed you long, old pup. You better have a good time tonight, because tomorrow... And then he drew a finger across his throat and made a wicked sound. He flashed a big grin, got into his pickup, and drove away. There was something about that dog catcher I don't like. Well, I lay there for a long time listening to the wind and thinking about my situation. All at once I got the feeling that I was being watched. I raised my head, cut my eyes to both sides, perked my ears, and tested the wind. Then I saw him, a basset hound, in the cell next to mine. He had a long body, short, stubby legs, long, droopy ears, and the saddest, most mournful face you could imagine. Howdy, he said in a slow-talking voice. My name's Ralph. I'm Hank the Cowdog, head of ranch security. Welcome to death row. Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here. You really mean that? Well, what do you think? He sniffed his nose. I 'spect not. You scared? Maybe. I'd be scared if I was you. You really got hydrophobia like they said? I don't know. Everybody thinks I do. Maybe I do. I told him the whole story, starting with the ivory dog bar I ate at Maggie's place. Ralph didn't strike me as being real bright, but I didn't have anything better to do than make conversation with him. It took my mind off my troubles. It took me a while to tell the story. Ralph's eyelids were drooping when I started. I think that was just his normal condition. His whole face drooped. Eyes, ears, jowls, everything. He was just a droopy kind of dog. Well, by the time I finished the story, he was asleep. Kind of hacked me off, him falling asleep. I got up and sneaked over to the fence, put my mouth right down under his ear, and yelled, Hey! His whole body just rose off the ground an inch or two as he opened his eyes. Soap, he said. Well, soap to you. You shouldn't go around asking questions if you can't stay awake for the answers. Even a dog on death row deserves a little courtesy. He blinked his eyes. Soap's the answer. Yeah, what's the question? It doesn't help to know the answer if you don't know what you're talking about. He pushed himself up and walked over to a water pan near the front of his cell. It was dark by the time I could hear his claws clicking on the cement floor. He lapped up some water and came clicking back and sat down. Mouth gets dry when I talk too much. He ran his tongue over the chops and wiped off the excess water. Seems to me you were the victim of a hoax. Oh, that's, Ralph. Seems to me you were the victim of a hoax. Oh, not likely, friend. I've been in security work for a long time. I can smell a hoax a half a mile away. Uh-huh, but it was soap. You said that before. It didn't make sense then, and it don't make sense now. Well, if you'll shut up a minute, maybe I can explain. I glared at him. You're telling me to shut up, is that it? Uh-huh. That's what I was driving at. I sat down. I can handle that. Tell me about the soap. One time they was washing out the dog pens. They don't do it very often, but this time they did. They had some little white bars that had ivory written on them. Okay, them was ivory dog bars, I said. The question here is, why would they use ivory dog bars for cleaning the pen? Ralph stuck his nose against the chain link fence. Because it was soap, you dope. Huh? You ain't got hydrophobia. You ate a bar of soap is why you was foaming at the mouth. Wait a minute, hold everything. I sprang to my feet and began pacing. It's coming clear now. All the clues are pointing in the same direction. At last, the pieces of this puzzle are falling into place. I was duped into eating a bar of soap, which explains why it tasted so awful. I knew something wasn't right. Ivory dog bar indeed. It was soap, Ralph. Don't you understand? They gave me soap, knowing it would produce the symptoms of hydrophobia. So all at once, this case is leading in a new and startling direction. For you see, Ralph, they did not only dupe me, but they also duped my sister Maggie. Which brings us to the crux of the matter, the throbbing heart of the mystery. I whirled around and faced him. The question now is, who are they? And why did they want... Ralph was asleep again. That's chapter 10. We'll be back for chapter 11 soon. Have a great one. Bye-bye.